Synopsis. They didn't just abandon her. They tied her wrists, stripped her coat, dragged her into the snow, and walked away as the blizzard closed in. Elena Cross was still breathing when the ice began to bury her. Her fingers were already blue, her lips split and bleeding. Each breath burned like broken glass as the storm erased her tracks, her screams, her very existence. By dawn, no one would remember she had ever lived. Except something did. High above the frozen valley, Darius Black, the last alpha dragon, lifted his head and smelled her blood on the wind. A human, dying, and impossibly, his. Dragons did not claim humans. Dragons did not bond. Dragons did not mark. But as Elena's heart slowed beneath the snow, Darius felt a pull older than law, stronger than fire. And when he found her, half-frozen, defiant even in death, his dragon made a single, irreversible decision. She would live, and she would belong to him. Episode 1. The rope bit into Elena Cross's wrists as they hauled her through the snow, skin tearing where frost had already numbed her fingers. She stumbled, caught herself, stumbled again. Each step sent knives of cold up her bare legs, through the thin shift they'd left her in when they tore her coat away and cast it at her feet like a joke. "Please," she said, though her voice came out wrong, cracked, small, almost swallowed by the wind. No one answered. They didn't look at her either. Not Marcus, who had sworn brotherhood beside her for 7 winters. Not Lisa, who had shared bread and secrets by the fire. Their faces were hard stone now, jaws tight, eyes fixed forward as if she were already gone. "Treason," the Alpha had said. One word, no proof, no trial. Just the snap of rope and the pack turning as one. The forest thinned, trees giving way to open white, and the storm found them at once. Snow slashed sideways, blinding. The wind howled like a living thing, clawing at Elena's skin, stealing her breath. When she fell this time, they did not slow. She was dragged, spine scraping ice, until something inside her gave a wet, burning twist, and she screamed. "Enough," someone muttered, not in mercy, in irritation. They stopped at the edge of the ravine where the world dropped away into nothing but swirling white. The rope was cut. Elena collapsed, gasping, snow already filling her mouth and hair. Boots turned, footsteps retreated, shapes vanished into the storm. "Wait," she tried to say. Her tongue barely moved. She lay there as the blizzard closed over her, sound dimming, sight shrinking to a tunnel of gray. The cold crept inward, slow and patient, stealing pain first, then thought. Her chest burned with each breath, then dulled. Memories surfaced unbidden, laughing around the hearth, hands clasped in trust. A promise whispered into her hair that she had believed with her whole heart. Lies, all of it. Snow covered her lashes. Her fingers no longer answered her will. Somewhere deep in her chest, her heart stuttered, then found a slower rhythm, heavy and tired. Elena let her eyes close, the wind's scream fading to a distant roar. Far above the storm, beyond the reach of pack law and human betrayal, something ancient paused mid-flight and turned its head toward the scent rising from the frozen valley below. Episode 2. The storm thinned as it rose, the violence of it flattening into cold, clean air above the clouds. Wings cut through that air with slow, powerful strokes, scattering frost like ash. Darius Black felt it then. Not sound, not sight. A pull, sharp and sudden, hooked beneath his breastbone and dragged hard. His wings faltered mid-beat, muscles locking as something unfamiliar tore through centuries of control. Heat surged where there should have been only disciplined stillness. "Human," his dragon whispered. "Impossible." He banked instinctively, spiraling higher to clear his head. But the scent followed. Blood, frost, fear, thin and fraying, threaded with something older that made his scales itch and his pulse thunder. It came from below, from the valley no dragon hunted, no dragon touched. A place of wolves and snow and small, fleeting lives. Dragon law rose like iron in his mind. Humans were not claimed. Humans were not brought into fire. Humans were left alone. The pull tightened, ruthless, demanding. Darius growled, the sound tearing loose from his chest and rippling through the clouds. His wings angled down despite himself, the world tilting as the frozen land rushed closer. The storm clawed at him now, ice cracking against obsidian scales, but he welcomed the pain. Pain was familiar. This was not. Below, the valley churned white. His eyes burned brighter, cutting through the blizzard, tracking the thinnest thread of scent as it weakened, stretched, began to fail. Too slow, his dragon snarled. Too late. He folded his wings and dropped. The air screamed past as he plunged, snow exploding outward when he struck the ground in a shockwave of heat and force. Ice melted instantly beneath him, hissing into steam. The storm recoiled, briefly stunned. He shifted before thought could catch him, bones grinding, fire pulling inward, until boots sank into slush and his hands trembled at his sides, claws just beneath the skin. The cold slammed into him, brutal, invasive, human cold. The scent was everywhere now. Faint. Broken. Darius moved fast, breath steaming, heart pounding harder with every step. Then he saw her, nothing but a shape at first, half lost beneath the drift, lashes rimed white, skin blue where the snow had kissed too long. Rope burned raw around her wrists, alive, barely. Something in his chest split open, hot and furious and final. He dropped to his knees, hands hovering for one suspended breath before gathering her against him, feeling how light she was, how wrong the cold felt on her skin. The world narrowed to the fragile rise of her chest and the truth roaring through his blood. Mine. Episode 3. The word burned through him as he gathered her closer, heat surging outward in a violent rush. Frost steamed off her skin where his arms closed around her, the snow beneath them hissing, retreating. She was too cold, unnaturally so, and the realization struck him like a blade. He rose in a single motion, cradling her against his chest as the storm clawed uselessly at his back. Wings tore free with a thunderous crack, scattering ice and wind. He leapt, the ground falling away as he beat upward, climbing hard through the blizzard until the cold thinned and the sky opened. Elena did not stir. Her head lolled against his shoulder, breath shallow, a fragile thread he could feel more than hear. Faster. The mountains answered his call, dark stone splitting as he descended into fire. Heat rushed to meet him, molten breath rolling up the tunnel of his lair as he landed deep within the mountain's heart. Lava light painted the cavern in gold and red, shadows writhing along the walls. He shifted as he moved, fire folding inward until boots struck warm stone and his arms tightened instinctively around her. He laid her near the lava flow, careful, reverent. The cold fought him still, clinging to her like a curse. He knelt, pressing his palms to her back, drawing on the heat coiled in his core and feeding it into her body. Steam rose in thick waves, her skin warmed by degrees, color returning slowly, stubbornly. A shudder ran through her. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then fixed on him. Terror flared sharp and sudden. She tried to pull away, a broken sound tearing from her throat as she saw his eyes, the scales along his jaw, the fire breathing in his chest. "Don't," he said, the word rough, too deep for human comfort. Her strength failed. She sagged forward, forehead brushing his collarbone before darkness took her again. He caught her easily, heart pounding, dragon roaring approval and hunger and something far more dangerous beneath it. This was wrong. Every instinct screamed it. He should leave her here, warm and alive, then go. Seal the mountain, break the trail, forget the scent that still sang in his blood. Instead, he drew her closer. The pull surged without warning, white-hot and absolute, snapping tight around his spine. His dragon reared, triumphant, claiming the truth he had denied since the sky itself first answered him. The bond had awakened, and it would not be denied. Episode 4. Darius felt it coil tighter with every breath Elena took. The mountain's heat did its work slowly, stubbornly, thawing what the storm had tried to steal. Color crept back into her cheeks. Her breathing evened, shallow, but no longer fading. He remained beside her, unmoving, afraid that if he shifted even an inch, the fragile balance holding her to life would break. Hours passed, measured only by the slow pulse of lava and the ache in his chest. When she stirred this time, it was different. Her lashes trembled, her fingers twitched against the stone. She woke with a sharp inhale, eyes snapping open as if dragged back by force. Fear came first, then anger, bright, focused, alive. "Don't touch me," she rasped, scrambling back until her shoulders hit the cavern wall. "I won't," Darius said, and meant it more fiercely than any oath he had ever sworn. Her gaze flicked over him, cataloging firelight on skin, the faint shimmer of scales along his throat, the impossible heat rolling off him in waves. "You're the one," she said slowly. "From the snow." "Yes." "They left me there," she whispered, and the words shook, not with weakness, but with contained fury. "They planned it. I know they did." The truth spilled out between ragged breaths. How the accusation had come too quickly, how the alpha would not meet her eyes, how the rope had already been cut before the word treason was spoken. Darius listened, jaw tight, something dark and lethal settling into place. "It wasn't fear of betrayal," he said when she finished. "It was fear of what you are." She laughed once, harsh. "I'm nothing." "No," he said. "You are bound to an old promise. Your blood carries it. A pact made before your kind and mine learned to hate each other." Her hands clenched. "I never agreed to any pact. I never agreed to you." The bond answered her denial with a low, relentless pull. Darius forced himself still, resisting the instinct to close the distance between them. "I know," he said, "and that is what makes this dangerous." Silence stretched, heavy and brittle. Far above them, beyond stone and fire, snow fell fresh over old tracks. Then it was disturbed, slow, deliberate. The sound carried faintly through the mountain, footsteps in the snow. Episode 5. The sound threaded through the mountain like a blade slipped between ribs. Darius stilled, every sense flaring outward. Heat rolled off him in a sudden, dangerous surge before he forced it down, breath tightening as he listened beyond stone and fire. Wolves. Not one pack. Several. Their scents braided together. Old loyalties soured with ambition, sharp with hunger. Elena felt it too. Her spine went rigid, eyes darting toward the cavern mouth as if she could see through layers of rock and ice. "They followed," she said. Not a question. "Yes." Her jaw clenched. "They won't take me back." "No," Darius agreed. "They won't." The truth of it settled between them like ash. In her pack, exile was mercy. What waited outside was not mercy. It was erasure, proof of loyalty written in blood. Darius moved then, not away from her but past her, already calculating distances, exits, kill paths. The mountain answered him instinctively, stone warming, lava churning faster, the deep bones of the place waking under his will. War was easy. He had been shaped for it. Leaving her was not. "If I go," Elena said quietly, "they'll follow me instead." He turned, firelight catching the tight line of her mouth. "You would not make it a mile." "I know how to disappear," she shot back. "I always have." The bond tugged hard at his spine, furious at the thought. His hands curled, claws biting skin. "They will not stop until you are dead." Her voice dropped. "Then don't let them take me alive." Something in him fractured at that. Darius crossed the space between them before he realized he'd moved, stopping short, close enough to feel her warmth now, fragile and stubborn. "They will not touch you," he said, and the promise was not gentle. It was absolute. Later, when he thought her resting, she heard him speak to the mountain itself, voice low, lethal, naming kill zones and choke points, deciding who would burn first. She understood then. There would be no rescue, no bargaining, only bodies. When he returned, quieter, she met his gaze without flinching. "If this ends with blood," she said, "it won't all be theirs." He inclined his head, a warrior's acknowledgement. Trust sparked there, thin, dangerous, real. Above them, snow collapsed from the cliffs as the first blow struck stone. The mountain trembled. Episode 6. Stone groaned deep in its bones, a sound older than language, as the first impact tore through the outer tunnels. Heat flared along the walls, molten veins brightening and warning. Dust rained from the ceiling. Elena staggered, catching herself against the rock as another ooter shook the ground beneath her feet. "They're breaching," Darius said, already moving. The roar that followed was not human. It was vast, furious, echoing through the mountain as if the stone itself had learned to scream. He shifted mid-stride, fire ripping outward as scales tore through skin, wings unfurling with violent force. The cavern blazed, shadows fleeing before him. "Go," he said. The word pushed through teeth already lengthening, voice fractured between forms. He forced himself back, just enough to look at her. "There is a passage behind the firefall. It will take you out on the far side of the ridge." Elena stared at him, heart hammering so hard it hurt. "You said they wouldn't touch me." "I said they wouldn't," he answered. "I didn't say I wouldn't burn the mountain down to stop them." Another strike hit. The floor lurched. Somewhere distant wolves howled, victory already tasting sharp in their throats. "If you stay," Darius continued, quieter now, raw, "you will be bound to this war. To me, to what I am. You will never be free of it." Firelight flickered across his face, and for the first time she saw it. Not the alpha, not the monster, but the cost he was already paying. The way his hands shook as he held himself back. The way his eyes burned not with hunger, but restraint. "You'd let me go," she said. "Yes." The bond screamed its refusal, a tearing pain low in her spine, but he stood his ground. He stepped aside, opening the path, giving her space he did not want to give. Elena took one step toward the darkness. The cold reached for her immediately, familiar, eager, and beneath it, emptiness. A hollow ache where something vital had already rooted itself too deep to tear free. She stopped. The mountain shook again, closer now. Stone split. Heat surged. Time narrowed to breath and heartbeat, and the truth settling, undeniable. She was already not alone. Elena turned back. Her hand lifted, trembling, not in fear, but in choice. She reached for him. Episode 7. The instant her fingers brushed his arm, the bond snapped tight. No longer a distant pull, but a living thing that flared hot and violent between them. Darius sucked in a breath that burned all the way to his lungs. Fire surged, wild and untamed, cracking through the cavern floor as molten light flared brighter. "Elena." Her name broke in his throat. Pain followed the heat. Sharp, demanding. It clawed through his spine, into his jaw, down his arms, the dragon rearing hard inside him, furious at restraint. Mark. Claim. Now. The instinct was brutal, ancient, blind to reason. She gasped, too, knees buckling as she swayed toward him. He caught her without thinking, hands gripping her shoulders, holding her just far enough away to keep his mouth from her throat. The scent of her flooded him, warm skin. Fear edged with resolve, the unmistakable truth of her blood calling to his own. "This will hurt," he said, voice rough, shaking with effort. "Once it begins, I may not be able to stop." Her breath came fast, shallow. She could feel it now, the bond's echo inside her chest, the strange heat coiling low, answering his. It terrified her, not the pain, the surrender. The way his presence filled every space, threatened to eclipse who she had been. "You're stronger than me," she whispered. Yes, he said, unflinching, and that is why this must be your choice. The mountain shook again, closer still. A howl echoed through the stone, answered by another, then many. Time was bleeding away. Elena closed her eyes. She thought of the snow burying her breath, of ropes cutting her wrists, of walking alone into a world that had already decided she was disposable. Then she thought of fire, of warmth that did not ask her to disappear, but dared her to endure. She looked up at him, really looked, and saw the cost written tight across his face, the restraint, the fear of becoming the very thing that had been used against her. I won't kneel, she said. His hands loosened instantly. Never. Her fingers slid into his, steady now despite the tremor running through her. Then don't choose for me, she said softly. Stand with me. The bond roared in triumph. She tilted her head, baring her throat, heart hammering as the truth settled clear and terrible in hers. I choose, she whispered. The dragon surged forward. His fangs descended. Episode 8. Pain flared, white, blinding, absolute. Elena cried out as heat tore through her throat and flooded her veins, fire racing where blood should have been. The world fractured into sensation, the crush of his hold, the searing bite, the sound of her own heartbeat roaring in her ears. She arched instinctively, fingers clutching at his shoulders as the bond snapped shut with a force that stole her breath. Darius felt it complete. The moment her blood met his, the dragon surged in full, a tidal wave of power and devotion and fury that nearly tore him apart. He anchored himself in her, around her, forcing the fire to bend, to feed rather than consume. The mark burned bright at her throat, a living sigil etched in heat and will. Hold, he commanded himself. Do not break her. She shuddered, knees giving way, and he followed her down, cradling her as the fire raged through them both. The pain crested, then shifted, no longer tearing but forging. Strength flowed where weakness had been. Warmth chased the last of the cold from her bones. Elena gasped, dragging air into lungs that suddenly felt too full, too alive. The mountain's heat no longer pressed in on her. It answered. She could feel it now, the deep pulse of stone and flame, the echo of him inside her chest. When she opened her eyes, the cavern seemed sharper, brighter, as if the world had tilted into focus. I'm still here, she whispered, half in disbelief. Darius bowed his forehead to hers, breath ragged. You are. The mountain screamed a warning. They were on their feet in an instant. Wolves poured into the outer cavern, eyes gleaming, weapons raised, then faltered as they saw her standing beside him, the mark blazing at her throat. Elena felt no fear, power coiled steady and sure beneath her skin. Enough, she said, her voice carrying farther than it should have. Fire answered. Darius moved with her, not ahead of her, and together they broke the assault. Heat and stone, and will driving the intruders back into snow and shadow. When the last howl faded, silence fell heavy and stunned. Elena stood at his side, breathing hard, alive in a way she had never been. High above the ravaged slope, unseen by either of them, a figure watched from the rocks. Eyes cold, scent sharp with interest. A rival alpha smiled. Episode 9. Elena felt it before she saw anyone. An itch beneath her skin, the bond tightening like a warning breath drawn too fast. She lifted her head, eyes tracking the ridgeline where the snow lay unbroken again, innocent as a lie. Whatever watched them vanished back into white, but the knowledge lingered. They won't stop, she said. No, Darius replied. Nor should they. They descended from the mountain at dawn, not fleeing, not hiding. Elena walked openly, the mark at her throat no longer concealed, firelight still faintly alive within it. The land seemed to recognize her passage, Wolves fell silent, birds scattered early, the air tightening with expectation. Her pack met them at the tree line. They came armored in righteousness, faces carved into masks of certainty. The alpha stepped forward, voice raised, rehearsed. "You consorted with a beast. You—" Elena laughed. Not loud, not kind. "You tied my wrists before you spoke," she said. "You cut the rope before you named my crime." A murmur rippled through the ranks. Doubt, thin but real. She told them everything, not as a plea, but as truth laid bare. The hidden lineage, the old pact erased from record. The fear that had driven them to decide death was simpler than losing control. As she spoke, the mark warmed, answering her words, and something ancient stirred in the watching earth. Darius did not speak. He did not need to. He stood beside her, unmoving, fire held in check, not a threat but a fact. The alpha reached for authority one last time. "You belong to us." Elena stepped forward alone. "I belong to no one who tried to bury me alive." The first challenger fell when he lunged. Fell not to flame, but to the sudden uprising of stone beneath his feet, the land itself rejecting him. Others backed away. Some knelt without realizing they had done it. When silence settled, it felt earned. The pact answered at last, awakening in blood and ground and memory. Old enemies scattered. Others bowed their heads, not to Darius, but to her. Elena exhaled, the weight of it settling, not power taken but claimed. Darius inclined his head to her, equal to equal, and far beyond the valley, word began to move, fast, uneasy, afraid. The world must adapt to a bonded dragon queen. The world did adapt, not quickly, not easily, but it bent, the way stone bends under heat, slow, inevitable, changed forever once it does. Snow still fell across the northern territories, softening scars left by fire and blood, but it no longer felt like a shroud. Wolves learned new paths, old borders lost their meaning. Stories traveled faster than armies ever had, of a woman who survived the snow, of a dragon who did not rule alone, of a bond that answered to no crown or pack law. Elena felt the shift in small, quiet moments, in the way the mountain opened its paths to her without resistance, in the way heat no longer startled her, but wrapped close like a familiar presence, in the way Darius watched her, not as something fragile to be guarded, nor as something to be commanded, but as someone who could walk away and chose not to. They learned each other slowly, deliberately. Trust built not in grand declarations, but in shared silence, in battles not fought because they no longer had to be. When fear surfaced, they faced it openly. When anger rose, it did not fester in the dark. The bond remained, steady now, a living thread woven deep. But it no longer burned. It warmed. It anchored. At night, when the mountains slept and the fire dimmed to a low, breathing glow, Elena would rest her head against his chest and listen to the sound she once feared. A heartbeat vast and patient and impossibly real. Darius would trace the mark at her throat with reverent care, still mindful of the line between strength and domination, still choosing her every time. One evening, as dawn threatened the dark and snow turned pale blue beyond the cavern mouth, Elena stood at the edge of the ridge and looked out over the land that had tried to erase her. She did not hate it anymore. Darius came to her side, close enough that she could feel him without being held. Equal, present, certain. "I used to think survival was enough," she said softly. "And now?" She touched the mark, feeling the bond answer. Not with demand, but with promise. She lifted her chin, the wind catching her hair, the world vast and open before her. "I was never abandoned," Elena said. "I was chosen.